Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if you were born 150 years ago, or even more, with a different society, different friends, different parents? What would your life have been like if you were born in, say, Victorian London, for example, or ancient Egypt? Well, I've constructed an immersive visual to show you exactly what that would be like. That's right, it's a trick question. If you weren't conceived exactly when you actually were, then you simply wouldn't exist.
What would it take for there to be this black, silent void before you existed? First, seeing black requires eyes. Seeing black is an experience. Silence is also an experience. To experience these things, there must be an experiencer of them. So Alex's immersive experience of this black void would require us to exist before we existed. That's completely absurd. Unless Alex believes we were something like souls before we came to exist. So imagine Alex as a soul floating in this black void. What would it take to get Alex out of this black void? I suppose it would take the union of a sperm and an egg. So here's Alex as a soul in his black void. Then a sperm plunges into an egg, and soul Alex is pulled or sucked out of the black void of nothingness into this egg. The combination of that specific sperm and egg was the combination required to pull soul Alex into a biological body, which I would call biological body Alex. Kind of like a shell that this soul is sucked into. I don't really think Alex believes all of that, but I do believe that he really does imagine this pre-existence black void. Why do I believe he believes this? Because Alex does the thinking and research necessary to come to his conclusions before he makes his videos. He has put thought into this, and this is the conclusion he came to. He felt that he thought about it enough to use this black void image. He didn't find it necessary to go beyond thinking this. He was satisfied to use this black void image to convey his thoughts on the matter. And that's why I'm confident when I say it's really what he imagines non-existence to be like. If he didn't, he would have used some other thought experiment, because he's not dumb. However, I am quite disappointed with Alex's conclusion on this. This is because this black void idea requires something like a soul, an experiencer. I know Alex is fond of panpsychism, but would we see a black void before we existed even if panpsychism were true? If consciousness is fundamental, then it is the universe experiencing itself, and the only time the universe could have seen itself as an empty black void would have been back before the Big Bang. There are actually parts of the universe right now that are empty voids, so are those the voids the universe would see? But the atoms that make us humans and all life on Earth up are predominantly from local parts of the universe that would not peer into a black void. So even if panpsychism is correct, life on Earth wouldn't have had a black void experience before those atoms came together to construct Earth's inhabitants. So panpsychism is ruled out as a candidate for there to have been a silent black void before you existed. Speaking of the universe experiencing itself, does Alex believe brains are responsible for consciousness? I've heard him say that brains clearly have something to do with consciousness. For now, I'll operate within the worldview that says brains are responsible for consciousness. Most atheists subscribe to this view. So if brains are responsible for consciousness, would there have been a black void before you existed? No, because seeing black and the experience of silence requires a brain to experience those things. So if a black void, which Alex illustrated using a black screen, isn't what there was before we existed, and would still be there if you were never born, then what should we conclude instead? First, I need to point something out. As philosopher Alan Watts pointed out, everyone refers to themselves as I. Why do we do this? This is because we all have something very basic in common, something so ubiquitous, so shared, it causes us all to refer to ourselves with the same word. This is what philosophers call the self. Just as Shakespeare's Juliet character has been played by many different actresses, each brain plays the character called I. As different as each I is, we're all the same once you strip away all individual behaviors, memories, and everything else that sets us apart from each other. You can imagine us as I clones, billions and billions of I's. Two I's came together and produced another I, ensuring I lives on. In this way, I is immune to death. One particular instance of I will end, but there's plenty more I that remains. So even in a world where you were never born, I still existed, and will exist after you die. That is to say, even if you were never born, consciousness itself would still exist. There was consciousness before you, and there will be consciousness after you. The thing is that we all didn't exist, yet a life was still imposed. You didn't exist, yet a life still followed your lack of existing. This is true for all life forms. Therefore, it is impossible for not existing to stop a life from being imposed. You didn't exist, but then, because a life came to exist, a life was imposed. So, if we imagine a universe completely devoid of all life, but then a single life comes to exist, an elephant, a dove, a human, a cat, then that is the life that does the imposition. That is the individual subjective experience that's imposed. Your lack of existing was incapable of stopping said individual life from being imposed, just as your lack of existing was unable to stop the life that's watching this video from being imposed. So as far as not existing being better, it doesn't matter if you were born or not, because suffering is still imposed via some other life. In a way, it's as if you were born anyway. Now, I'm not saying we should have kids. I'm just pointing out the problem with the idea that not existing can be better. I'm also not saying that there aren't specific individuals that it would be wrong to bring to exist, although we cannot be sure that if they were never born, that some other life being imposed would have been better. So in a way, I actually cannot say for sure that it is better for any individual, even if they're suffering horribly, to not exist, since some other life will be the one imposed, and said other life could be worse. So it actually could be better that bad life A was born as to avoid bad life B from being imposed instead. There's no escaping one life or another. You might think an empty universe would be good, but good for who if there's no one around to enjoy said good? Good requires an experiencer to experience it. Otherwise, no good exists. I've made similar response videos to Alex before, but it appears he either didn't watch them or he doesn't agree. Instead, he appears to believe not existing means a silent black void. I implore you to ask Alex to watch this video. Thanks for watching.